there's an expression, we begin the four kashas with manishtana halayla hazem mikol halaylos. Why is this Pesach any different? So I think this Pesach, the question is a very good one. Why is this Pesach any different? So it's very different because it comes after quite a difficult year. Perhaps it's the beginning of Yitzias Mitzrayim, similar to Yitzias Mitzrayim, where the Yidden were finally beginning to see some light ahead. The Yidden left Mitzrayim on Pesach, but they didn't have Kriyas Yamsuf till a couple of days later. So hopefully this will be the Yitzias Mitzrayim for us as well. So that's Pesach. It's about Yitzias Mitzrayim, about hopefully the end of a very difficult year. But at the same time, this Pesach is different than many other Pesachs, because this Pesach, to an extent, depending who you ask, you might hear that it's a little bit easier than normally, because the first Seder is Shabbos night. The first Seder being Shabbos night, it really gives us an opportunity, physically and spiritually, throughout Shabbos, in order to prepare for the Seder. So although talking about halacha, halacha says you can't actually lie down on Shabbos saying that I want to go to sleep so that I can be rested for Shabbos night. You can't say it that way, but you could rest and be rested for Shabbos night. You're allowed to do that. But that leads us to that we have to be extremely careful in the kinds of things that we do this Erev Pesach relative to every Erev Pesach of the year, because this Erev Pesach happens to be a Shabbos. So let's talk about a little bit first about the unusual circumstances of this Erev Pesach, and as a result of which there are some specific halachas associated with it. So we have Erev Pesach being Shabbos, obviously the Bedikas Chametz, the Biur Chametz, all of that doesn't take place like it normally does the night before Pesach for Bedikas Chametz and the Biur Chametz Erev Pesach, which this year is Shabbos. But considering the setup of this year's Pesach, we have the Bedikas Chametz that takes place Thursday night, which is the night before Erev Pesach, not the night of Erev Pesach like it normally is. And obviously the reason is because we can't do Bedikas Chametz on Friday night. So we do it the night before, which is Thursday night. Similarly so, we don't do the burning of the Chametz on Erev Pesach, which is Shabbos this year. So we do it, instead of Shabbos morning, we do it Friday morning. And so too, another concept is that normally on Erev Pesach, there is the Hainus B'chayrim, the firstborn has to fast. And we don't fast. Instead of fasting, what we do is we have a siyum. We listen to a siyum, either the firstborn, or if the firstborn happens to be a child yet, so it's customary that the father, instead of the child, listens to the siyum. But this year, instead of having the siyum being done on Erev Pesach like it's normally done, which is Shabbos, we obviously don't fast on Shabbos, so we wouldn't even be fasting. So the fast that would be the Tainus B'chayrim would be on Friday, and as a result of which the siyum is also heard Friday morning instead of Shabbos morning. So a lot of the things that we normally do just before Pesach is pushed back a day. That is also the selling of the chametz. The selling of the chametz, which is something that's extremely important to do, particularly in today's day and age. Once upon a time, it wasn't unusual for people to get rid of all of their chametz before Pesach. I remember hearing from my father-in-law, who was brought up in a shtetl in Poland, and he described to us what Erev Pesach looked like. And he said that what happened at Erev Pesach was, Erev Pesach, they Erev Pesach in the morning, they would have, the kitchen would be chametzdik. And then as soon as they finished breakfast, they would take everything out of the kitchen and would wash down the entire kitchen, walls and floor and everything in it, and obviously put away the chametz dishes. And there was no chametz left in the house. They wouldn't save. They barely had enough to eat, let alone save it for, before or after. They didn't have storage place for food. They didn't have food to store. So it wasn't a problem for Pesach. It made life so much easier on Pesach. So they didn't have to worry about that. They would just empty out the chametz kitchen, and in a matter of not too much time, it would end up being a Pesach kitchen. And there was no issue of even selling chametz because they had no chametz to sell. So that was once upon a time. And, that was not that long ago in Poland, but for many years, that's the way it was for most Jews, that there wasn't an issue of selling chametz, because people did not, the whole concept of having chametz with all kinds of preservatives is something that's relatively new. And as a result of which, we can put it away in the freezer, we can save it, we can store it, and so on. But once upon a time, that wasn't an issue. So the only time really, and the only reason that the whole concept of selling chametz was instituted was, for the most part, for innkeepers that would sell whiskey and wine and all kinds of, and many of them were Jewish. And there they had stored a lot of whiskey that was chametzik. And as a result of which, when it came before Pesach, and the only way to do it was figure out how to be able to hold on to it on Pesach, because otherwise they would have to get rid of so much whiskey that was chametzik. And so the Chachamim came up with a solution, so Yidden shouldn't have to throw all of that out and lose so much money. So they came up with a solution that somebody that had that, the unusual somebody, would sell his chametz to a goy. And obviously for those few people, they would have to find the guy and make sure that the selling of the chametz was done properly. It's not a simple thing. It's not a simple procedure. But as time went on and it became more of an opportunity for everybody to have chametz stored, chametz kept in storage, chametz saved, for a week or more, a month even, and whatever it was, and it came out of Pesach, and rather than throwing out all the chametz, it became more and more a common practice that people would be selling their chametz. So it was instituted at some point that the selling of the chametz should be done specifically by the rabbis of the community, because what was happening is people were knowing that there's an option to sell chametz, they would sell the chametz to their next door neighbor who was a guy. And unfortunately, often what would happen is they would sell it inappropriately, where the sale wasn't really a sale. It was pretty much a joke as to what was going on, because it wasn't a sale. It looked like a sale. I thought it was a sale, but no sale really happened. And the chametz that I thought I sold to a guy, there was really it wasn't done legally appropriate, and it certainly wasn't done al pi halacha appropriate. And as a result of which, the Chachamim established that people should not do that by themselves, because it's like every other halacha. You really need to thoroughly understand what it is and how it needs to be done, and all the details specifically associated with it. And specifically because of the seriousness of chametz on Pesach. Chametz on Pesach is a very serious issue. It's one of those things that the Torah says that a person that keeps chametz on Pesach, the transgression is kodis. God forbid a person can die because of that. So now, obviously, it's a very serious issue. It's a serious issue in terms of the kind of transgression that it is, as well as on a spiritual sense, it's a serious issue, because what chametz represents is haughtiness, gaiva, feeling great about yourself, to the extent of excluding everybody else, ignoring everybody else, and doing inappropriate things to everybody else because they come into your way. And that's the idea of chametz blowing up. Matzah is the idea of bittul, humility. And that's generally what Chassidus explains, what chametz represents, matzah represents. And as a result of it, it's something that is very serious in halacha. In the halacha, chametz on Pesach is something that we have to be extremely careful about, to the extent that the Arizal says that somebody that is careful on chametz of, you wonder, why are we so careful about chametz on Pesach when, you might even think that it comes to halachas of Shabbos, not everybody is as careful as they may be when it comes to chametz on Pesach. Products and check out the products and be sure you checked, you cleaned your home and you did the bedika and all of the specifics associated with it, and so many different chumras that are taken upon, many of different customs that come along with it. Why is it that when it comes to chametz on Pesach there is that much of that? And the answer to it is because what the chametz and the matzah represent, and the Arizal says as a result of that, kol hanizar b'mashu chametz b'Pesach, if somebody is extremely careful about chametz on Pesach, that he not even a tiny bit of chametz enters his home or exists in his home on Pesach, he says muftach le shelayechta kol hashana kula. He is guaranteed that he will not sin the entire year. So imagine, we can get a guarantee. All you have to do is be good for 8 days and you'll have no problem of any sin the entire year. So taking that really seriously gives us an understanding of why so many people are extremely careful when it comes to chametz on Pesach, because apparently it is a serious issue. And there's so much that we're told about regarding us being careful about it. And when we recognize that it's about humility, and it's when we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu, it doesn't tell us what kind of nice guy he was. It doesn't tell us what kind of charitable person he was. What does the Torah tell us about Moshe Rabbeinu? He was the most humble person. Apparently, humility is something that's very great, very special. And that's really what the celebration of Pesach is really all about. Acquiring humility and seeing what we can do towards that end. And as a result of that, when it comes to chametz on Pesach, there are so many different chumras, so many different stringencies, so many different customs, so many different minhagim that are associated with it, and each one of them is special. So you might say, there's so many minhagim, where did you come up with this particular minhag or that particular minhag? And the answer is that we're told that when it comes to the minhagim of Pesach, any minhag, any custom that one has been brought up with and their family has been practicing, that obviously has a legitimate source, is something that people should be very careful with and be serious about. Obviously, there are situations where a person, bali tshuva, that don't have, a quote unquote family custom, that you don't look to everybody and take everybody's chumrah on, because that doesn't make sense. But the way to do it is to decide that I'm going to take on the chumras of a particular family, and that's what I'll do, and find out what the chumras of that particular family is, and those are the kinds of things that I'll do. But, to take on the chumras of every family is really ridiculous. Although for each family independently, the chumras that they do, that's great. But for anybody to say, I'm going to do the chumras of everyone, I'll, find out what's every chumrah in the book, and I'll do all of them. It's nice to find out what they are, but it's not a good idea to do all of them, because that's not what Pesach is about. Because as we all know, on Pesach and any Yom Tov is a time of joy and happiness. If you take on every chumrah in the book, there's not going to be any joy and happiness. And the joy and the happiness associated with Pesach is a mitzvahs esem in HaTorah, is a positive commandment of the Torah. As a matter of fact, there are halachas, specific halachas associated with what we have to do for ourselves, for our children, for our husbands, for our wives, in order to make sure that there is joy and happiness during Pesach. And that's a halacha that the Torah tells us very clearly, as opposed to many of the chumras that may be very good, but they aren't necessarily halachas of Torah. They may be nice chumras, so we have to be careful to balance them and be sure that we're not doing things that are driving ourselves crazy and the people around us crazy, and at the expense of things that we really should be doing. So chumras are very good and very important, but be sure that whatever they are, there's a source for it. And again, even if there is a source for it, you can't take on every chumrah in the book. But again, what I suggest is always to choose a particular family that you want to take on the chumras that they may have accumulated over the years from generation to generation, and that's what you'd like to do. So associated with that is obviously when we get to get ready for Pesach, it starts with the preparations for Pesach. The preparations for Pesach begin with the cleaning the home for Pesach. When we say cleaning the home, it means cleaning your home, cleaning your office, cleaning your car, cleaning any place that you have, that you own, that, as the expression is, kol mokim shemachnisim by chametz tzarech bedika. Any place that possibly chametz could have been brought in, so it needs bedikas chametz, and obviously in preparation for bedikas chametz, it needs cleaning for chametz. So it has to be cleaned to be able to, so that when it comes to bedikas chametz, you don't have to start cleaning then, because if you're gathering some crumbs and you come into a place, you can't do any bedika that way. So the cleaning for the chametz is really the preparation for the bedikas chametz, which leads us to the concept of realizing that cleaning for Pesach doesn't mean, obviously, spring cleaning. It's nice to do a spring cleaning when you have time for it. The time for that isn't usually, or the good time for it isn't usually before Pesach, because there's a whole lot more that needs to get done in preparation for Pesach than the spring cleaning. So what can be done is, certain things that you have time for, but obviously don't spend your time and energy on things that you don't need to do for Pesach, such as, a lot of people are, and it might be something that you've gotten used to, before Pesach, you take off the curtains to clean, or you wash all your furniture, or whatever it happens to be that you're doing. That might be a nice thing, and you might end up with a nice, beautiful house, and it's important to keep clean. But at the same time, the time for that is not when you're so busy with so many other things and preparing, the food that you need to have for Pesach. That's all good. That's all necessary. The cleaning is a nice thing, but if it's not specifically for Pesach, it's not necessary. So don't spend your energy on the things that you don't have to. So again, cleaning your house is cleaning chametz from your house. What that means is any place in your home that there's a chance that there was chametz there, it's our job to make sure that we clean the chametz. We take the chametz away. We take the chametz away means, whether it means sweeping the floors, vacuuming the furniture, vacuuming the couches, but, and what really is something to think about is the kinds of things that we don't normally think about, which might be, and there are, examples of things that we don't necessarily think about regularly, that we should stop to think that maybe these are things that we ought to be cleaning this time. For example, as we mentioned earlier, the car. People sometimes leave the car for the last thing when maybe the car should be really the first thing, because the car is a place where you're in it whatever amount of time of the day, and you often put some stuff, you're eating something and you put something down, whether it's how often, and I've heard this more often than anything else, that in the middle of Pesach, Rabbi, I found something in my car. And more than anything else, that's where I've heard about, I found something in my car. whether it's in the trunk, whether it's in the seats, whether it's in the glove compartment. It's a common place that people cleaning. And the truth is that a car has an obligation for bedikas chametz as much as any room in your house has an obligation. And if anything, a car has definitely an obligation, because it's definitely a place, unless you're somebody that would never bring in any chametz into your car. But I'd say most often, most people would have chametz in their car. Certainly if they have children, they would have chametz in their car. And the whole idea of bedikas chametz is, or cleaning for chametz is, so that if during Pesach, God forbid, somebody finds a piece of chametz and unintentionally you take that piece of chametz because you're so used to it and you put it into your mouth. It's for that reason that the question is always asked, why do we have bedikas chametz? Why don't we have bedikas our house? Once a year, we should have a time to check our house, or once a week, to be sure everything in the house is kosher. Why don't we have a halacha that once a month we have to go through every closet in our house, every closet in our kitchen, to be sure everything in it is kosher? Why isn't there a halacha like that? And the answer is why there isn't a halacha like that, because when it comes to chametz v'Pesach, it's the kinds of things that we eat regularly. We're used to eating it. A piece of cracker, we always eat, and all of a sudden on Pesach, you're not allowed to eat it. And if you're going to come across it, there's a good chance you're going to forget and you'll put it into your mouth. So the Torah says it's those things that we're so used to eating or so used to participating in, and now we're not allowed to. It's those things that we have to do all that we can to make sure that we remember. So number one, there's cleaning for Pesach, to make sure there's no chametz around. No chametz around in any corners or crevices or under the desk or under the couch or wherever. And similarly so, there's anything obvious, even closets in your kitchen. If there's any chametz around, make sure that those closets are clearly closed up and dedicated as a chametz closet. So in theory, what you really could do is, if you wanted to, you could avoid cleaning your closets. You can just tape up all of your closets in your kitchen, not use any of the closets in the kitchen, bring in a new cabinet just for Pesach stuff, and all the cabinets in your kitchen are taped up for Pesach, and this is sold to the guy, and the chametz is clearly in all of those closets in the kitchen. Technically, that's acceptable. If you can convince your wife to accept that. But the truth is that that's really what should be done, not to all the closets, but to some of them. They should be dedicated as these are chametz closets. And it doesn't have to be taken out of this closet and put into another closet, or taken out of the closet and put into the basement. You could, more easily deal with it if you just dedicated some of the closets for specifically chametz items, and they remain in those closets. If you have a closets where you keep cereals all year round, let them stay there. Let them stay in those closets. Close up those closets, lock it up, tape it up, whatever it is that you're going to be sure. And you can easily get, locks for closets today, for cabinets in your kitchen. You can buy those children locks and or put tape on it to be sure that it's going to remind you, not just your children should go into it, but you shouldn't go into it either. And if you do that, you could, according to halacha, include that into the sale of chametz, and there's no problem. So again, the idea of bedikas chametz is checking places, making sure that places that are going to remain open for everybody, you're not locking them up. Your living room, your dining room, your kitchen, your bedrooms, there's not going to be chametz around. If there's chametz around in any of those places, make sure to put them into a dedicated closet of chametz. Make sure that chametz is closed up, that closet is closed up, and that closet is included in the sale to the guy. And when you sell it to the guy, it is a complete sale, which is another interesting concept. We started talking about it a little bit earlier. And there are those, it isn't such a such a given that the sale is a sale and not a problem. There are some people that have a custom that they do not sell what's referred to as chametz gomur. That's something that is clearly chametz, a piece of bread, as an example, which is clearly chametz. So there are people that do not include something that's really chametz in a sale to the guy. They only include things that are questionably chametz, or maybe the dishes that were chametz dishes, or something to that effect. But something that is clearly chametz, there are those that will not include that in the sale, because from their perspective, the sale is a sale, but it's still, it's a little questionable because, after all, you're selling the, you imagine, I sell the chametz for Giant Eagle. So Giant Eagle, who has, I think, a couple of thousand stores, all of the chametz is sold to the guy. And can you imagine, the guy that buys all of that chametz, he must be a really wealthy guy. So think about it for a moment and think to yourself, is that really a sale? I mean, it doesn't sound like a sale to me. If you're selling, suppose, somebody came over to you and said, I'll sell you the Empire State Building. And no, I'll write out a contract and sell it to you. Yourself, what do you mean? I don't have the money to buy it. Don't worry about it. We'll write out a contract and everything will be fine. I mean, to an extent, it seems like that is what we're doing when we're selling our chametz to a guy. Because we're just, we're not looking for a wealthy guy to sell the chametz to. We're looking for any guy that's going to buy the chametz, and we write out a contract. Actually, by the way, when you sell the chametz to the rabbi, you're not really selling your chametz to the rabbi. Often people use the terminology, I have to sell my chametz to the rabbi. Any rabbi doesn't buy chametz from anybody. Rabbi's not in the business of buying chametz. You don't want chametz, he doesn't want chametz either. So you're not selling chametz to the rabbi. What you're doing is you're giving the rabbi permission to sell your chametz for you to a guy. So you're signing on a contract that says, I hereby give permission to Rabbi so-and-so to sell the chametz that's in, to sell the chametz of so-and-so in, that's now in address so-and-so, and that's what you do. Then the rabbi writes up a contract of sale to the guy and says that all the chametz that people have given me permission to sell for them, I am hereby selling it to you. But again, the question becomes, how does that work? And as I said, there are some that are concerned about that, and as a result of that, don't really sell real chametz. They only sell something that might be questionable and so on. But because of this issue, the Alter Rebbe came along and devised a plan, and the sale of chametz that any Chabad Chassid does is a little bit different than the sale of chametz, the sale procedure of chametz that is normally done. What's the difference? One detail, and that is that when I sell the chametz to a guy and I have a contract with him and tell him, you owe me whatever this chametz is worth. And in the contract, it says that we're going to evaluate, we're going to get a price on it, and whatever the price on it is that's how much you're going to have to pay me for it. So now, again, the question is, does he have that money? Does he have even the ability to get that kind of money? And as a result of which, maybe the sale isn't a sale. The Alter Rebbe said that there's introduced a concept of an Arav Kablan. What's an Arav Kablan? There's two different types. An Arav Kablan basically means a guarantor. So somebody that guarantees for the guy that he will guarantee that the guy will pay for the chametz. That, in other words, if the guy can't come up with the money because he just doesn't have that kind of money, so you find somebody that's Jewish, that ability. So now what happens is the Jew, that's the Arev, takes responsibility on behalf of the guy. So I no longer, if the guy, after Pesach, if the guy holds on to the chametz and he has to pay me for it, I don't go to the guy for the money, I go to the Jew that took the responsibility. And the kind of guarantor is referred to as a Arav Kablan. there are different types of guarantors. A normal guarantor is somebody that if you take a loan, you need somebody that's going to guarantee on your behalf that if you can't come up with the payment, the guarantor is going to pay for it. But an Adar Kabbalah means that not if you can't come up with it, that to begin with, I will not go to the guy for the money. To begin with, I'm going to go to the Jew for the money. And the Jew is going to have to deal with the guy to figure out how to get the money. But one way or another, the Jew is going to give the rabbi the full money for whatever it might cost. The Alter Rebbe says, this way, the sale is a legitimate sale because everybody knows that, the Jew, even if he's not a millionaire, if he made a sale, hopefully, one way or another, he's going to figure out how to come up with the money. If it means he's going to have to sell all of these property, whatever it happens to be, come up with the money, and then give this money to the rabbi. So again, because you're dealing now with a Jew in between, it makes the sale a more serious sale. The Alter Rebbe introduced, and as a result of which, the Alter Rebbe makes it very clear that there's absolutely no problem with including in the sale of the chametz anything that is clearly chametz, a loaf of bread, challah, cereals, whatever it is that you want can be included. As a matter of fact, I often tell people that there's always a problem after Pesach. After Pesach, you can't buy chametz from a place that's owned by a Jew that didn't sell their chametz. And as a result of which, it sometimes becomes a problem that you can't always get what you want. After a certain period of time, you're allowed to buy it. But so long as they have the chametz that was kept over Pesach, until they get rid of that, until they get a new shipment, you're not allowed to buy it from them. So,
can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yes.
What's the reason for me to sell it? Why don't I just give it? Why, what's the reason? We don't get full price. It's just something symbolic, no?
No. So the answer is that the reason, if you want to give it to somebody, if you have chametz and you want to give it away, that's perfectly fine. You could give it away. The point is you cannot own it. Now, why you sell it is because if you have a lot of chametz and you don't want to get rid of it, you don't want to give it all away. If you have a freezer, a closet full of cereals, and you have a lot of chametz in your home that you don't want to just give away. So as a result of which, or suppose you own a grocery store and there's a lot of chametz in that grocery store, you don't want to just give everything away. So what do? So the answer is, what you do is you have to sell it to a guy. So during Pesach, you do not own that chametz. And as I said,
but you just said that. I've seen it here, even in Pittsburgh. People make a cabinet and they put it and they tie a rope or put something to stick on, and that's it. And I'm sure it's packed with chametz.
No. So again, the answer to that is what they do is they do exactly what you just said. But then in addition to that, they sell it. They come to the rabbi and they write down their name and address where their chametz is. And that chametz that's in your closet, in your house, is included in the sale that I do with the guy. So it's in your house, but it doesn't belong to you, because not only do I sell that chametz, I also rent to him the right. Technically, the guy has the right to knock on your door. He can look at an address. He can knock on your door and say, you know what? I would like to come into your house. The chametz is mine. I want to have some of that chametz now. And legally and halachically, you have to let him in. And today, these things don't happen. But there have been stories in the history of the Jewish people where in Shtetlach, things like that did happen, where the guy showed up in the middle of Pesach and said, this is my chametz, I'm taking it. And the Jews couldn't do anything. He's right. So the point
I'm talking about now, for instance, I used to have, before the COVID, I used to have an employee. He's not a Jew, of course. And I give it to him.
So
I
again,
say, give me a quarter. I tell him, give me $1 normally. I say, give me $1 and take it out.
so if you have just a little bit of chametz and you can get rid of it, no problem. But if you have a lot of chametz and you don't want to just give it away, then the solution is to sell the chametz to a guy.
Okay. And I burn the bread. The only thing I burn is basically the bread. No,
The only thing what?
I burn the bread. You go, you
No.
make.
No, the what you burn is some bread that you set aside for bedikas chametz. You know, any
Right.
yeah, you can burn anything you want, but you don't want to burn stuff that you're allowed to have. So you take a few little pieces of bread that you set aside, you know, the 10 pieces of bread that we set aside for bedikas chametz, and we gather it, we take that and we burn it.
Anything that I'm gonna put in the, let's say, in the closet, anything that it's unopened. If I have, let's say, a box of cereal unopened, or if I have flowers unopened, or all the open, I need to get rid of it.
No, you can put it in the closet and close up that closet as long as you've sold your chametz to a guy through the rabbi.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
So you're welcome. So now we have that, you know, the issues of the many issues of bedikas chametz that come up. But again, keep in mind that the purpose of the bedikas chametz is not to drive ourselves crazy with cleaning, but it's rather to make sure that we've gotten to all the places that there might be any chametz. When I say gotten to all the places there might be chametz, I mentioned some before, but another place that often people forget is you have a vacuum cleaner, and the vacuum cleaner has a bag in it, and that bag, if you haven't changed the bag recently, it could be a bag full of chametz that you've just cleaned your chametz floor with, and it's full of chametz. And before Pesach, you forgot to throw out that bag. That's a bag full of chametz. So when you talk about checking for chametz, keep in mind that is one of those things that need to be checked for. You have to be looking for the chametz in the vacuum cleaner, and maybe the vents in your kitchen need to be picked up, lifted up, because maybe your children threw Cheerios down there. And during Pesach, they might throw Cheerios, they might pick up that vent themselves and find some candies that they want. So it's those kind of things that you have to think of, and that's what the cleaning for chametz is really all about, and that's what the bedikas chametz is all about, to, you know, after it's been cleaned. So the more cleaning you do, the less whoever does the bedikas chametz is going to have to work at, because the bedikas chametz is really a follow-up to the cleaning, and the better the cleaning, the less the job on the bedika. Although there's a story told, again, just from the spiritual perspective, it's told about that the Alter Rebbe, when he came the first time from the Magid, from the home of the Magid, from after having spent time at the Magid the first time around and learning from him, Alter Rebbe was a student of the Magid. When he came home, the first Pesach Erev Pesach that he was home, he had a room. His whole house consisted of one room, and it says that he spent all night in bedikas chametz for that one room. So again, thinking about what the concept of bedikas chametz really is on a spiritual level, it's, you know, cleaning up. But at the same time, the bottom line is, in a practical way, we have to make sure that we're cleaning the chametz, bits and pieces of the chametz, and if we do that, we've come a long way in the fulfillment of what the Eibishter wants of us. The Alter Rebbe did it a little bit differently, but we have to, if we follow the mitzvah, if we follow the instructions of halacha, of Shulchan Aruch, we're in good shape. And
I have a question about bedikas chametz. I heard that if you turn over, let's say you turn over earlier in the week before the actual night that it's needed, that you have to do bedika in your kitchen before you start cooking.
again,
Let's say you turn over on Sunday to start cooking for Pesach,
if
and
you
then
start
Thursday.
cooking on Sunday, okay?
Yes, before you start cooking, you have to do a bedika just in your kitchen before you start cooking. Is that correct?
Incorrect. That's
Okay.
not correct. What you have to do if you start cooking in your kitchen is make sure it's clean. You have to make sure that your kitchen is clean because you don't want to cook for Pesach if the kitchen isn't clean. But it does not need, bedikas chametz is done the night before Pesach. And in this case, it's 2 nights before Pesach because Erev Pesach is on Shabbos. That's when bedikas chametz is. The only time that bedikas chametz is done earlier is if somebody's not going to be home on the night of bedikas chametz this year. If somebody's not home on Thursday and he's coming on Friday and he won't be home Thursday, what should he do? So technically, he could do bedikas chametz on Wednesday or Tuesday or Monday or even a week before. The only difference is if you do bedikas chametz in a time that is not the appropriate time for it, in other words, the time that's not dedicated for the mitzvah, which is the night before. So when it's dedicated for the mitzvah, you can make a bracha before you do bedikas chametz. As opposed to if you do bedikas chametz Wednesday night or Tuesday night or whatever, then you do bedika, but you don't do it with a bracha. But the only time you would do that is if you're not going to be home on Thursday night and you can't make it. But otherwise, you want to do it Thursday night because that's when the mitzvah is, and that's when you can make a bracha. So why do it at a time that you can't make the bracha, and it's not really the time that the mitzvah is? If you can't, you can't.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Certainly.
This is just for general knowledge. Can a woman, let's say a woman, she's doesn't have a husband for whatever the reason, you know, she doesn't have a husband. Can she do bdikat chametz?
If she doesn't have a husband, she can do bedikas chametz. Yes, she has to be extremely careful with it. Yes, it's, you know, it's best for everybody to do, you know, let the husbands do the bedika and let the women do the cooking or whichever one they're better at.
No. I'm specific. You know, I ask specific question. I'm looking for specific answer.
So you got the specific answer.
It's just if she can do it, she can do it. If she cannot, she cannot.
Correct.
That's all. So she can do it.
That's it. If she
Okay.
can do it, if she can commit herself to do it, you know, and obviously bedikas chametz is a commitment. She doesn't have to do it like the Alter Rebbe did it, but she has to do it like it should be done.
What you're asking, Rabbi, what he's asking, if a woman is single, not that she's not married, if a woman's single, if her husband's not there, if there's not a man there, but if a woman is single and she's the adult in the house, then she does bedikat chametz.
So the answer that I gave him is that she does.
Right. Okay. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, so that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me get to, before we run through the class without answering some of the questions that actually were asked in advance, and that is, number one, there was a question asked, can we eat egg matzah at the Shabbos meal before Pesach? Why? What's the question? The question is obvious because we know that there's a custom, again, a custom, not a halacha. There's a custom that we don't eat matzah. Chabad custom is from a month before, from after Purim until Pesach, Shloshim Yom, 30 days before Pesach, we don't eat matzah anymore. So we should have, by the time we come to the matzah that we're going to eat, the matzah's mitzvah, the matzah that we eat for the mitzvah, which is during the Seder, we're going to really have a good appetite for it because we haven't had it for such a long time. And we may have not eaten it all year, but certainly for 30 days, you know, the custom is, and again, it's a custom, it's not a halacha. So having said that, the question is, what about egg matzah? So the answer is egg matzah can be eaten up until as long as you can eat chametz, you can eat egg matzah. Because egg matzah is not the matzah that you're eating for the mitzvah. Your matzah's mitzvah is the matzah that you eat, that's the shmura matzah. And the egg matzah, according to most halachic authorities, unless it's a very unusual circumstance, you're not even allowed to eat it on Pesach. And it's interesting because many of the matzahs, the egg matzahs, and if you look at it carefully, now it's different, but for many years, it would, would say on the box, it would say kosher lePesach. And then in a few little words in Yiddish, who understands Yiddish here? Not too many, but in a few little, you would say that this matzah is kosher lePesach only for somebody that's sick and can't bite the regular matzah, and then under those circumstances, you can't have any other matzah. So then if the rabbi permits, under those circumstances, you're allowed to use this matzah. And that was in Yiddish words, in small Yiddish words, and in big words. People walked into a supermarket and they would find kosher lePesach matzah, the egg matzah. But again, now they've changed that. Now most egg matzahs, because it was one of the biggest scandals, because so many people who really wanted to buy matzah for Pesach would go buy the egg matzah, assuming it says kosher lePesach. Why would I know any different? And today it's become, I don't know if it's a law or whatever, but the reality is that now on the egg matzah boxes, it does say it not in small letters in Yiddish, but it's also in relatively small letters, but it's in English. But the reality again is that in terms of the question, it's a very good question, but the answer is that because it's egg matzah and it's not the matzah that we're going to eat at the Seder, that matzah can be eaten until Shabbos morning. And we didn't mention that. And the point of that, on the one hand, we stop eating, we do B'dikas Chametz Thursday night, and we do Biur Chametz, the burning of the Chametz, Friday morning. We burn our Chametz Friday morning. So normally, after you burn your Chametz, shortly after that, you stop eating Chametz. But this year, because Pesach is not until Shabbos night, Pesach isn't Friday night. So although we burn our Chametz Friday morning, and that's because we can't burn the chametz on Shabbos morning. So we burn our chametz Friday morning. Why Friday morning? Why don't we burn it Friday afternoon? Just before Shabbos, just before Lichbenchen, we should burn our chametz. And the answer is because the Chachamim wanted us not to confuse ourselves. Because next year, somebody who's doing this for the first time is going to say to himself, we burn our chametz just before we ben shlicht. Although this year, you might have been able to do that because it's not Erev Pesach. But a year that it's really Erev Pesach, you're not allowed to have the chametz after the, approximately 10 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock in the morning, depending on the timing. So the Chachamim said that Friday morning, when we burn our chametz this year, rather than doing it Shabbos, we still do it during the time that we normally do it, which is in the morning, Friday, and we don't wait until later in the day. So although we burn our chametz in the morning, but we're still allowed to eat chametz after we burn our chametz. That's an unusual circumstance, because on the one hand, Friday morning we burnt our chametz. On the other hand, Friday night, we're gonna, and technically we can have a full chametz meal. Friday night, we can have a full chametz meal Shabbos morning as well, as long as it's early enough. Although that's not a good idea, but technically that could be done. What is the good idea? The good idea would be that Friday night, you have only things that are kosher lePesach, except for the lechem mishnah, the two little rolls that you have to make sure, maybe you even want to eat it out on the porch or, eat it in a bag. So you make sure that no crumbs fall anywhere and you have just a little, just enough you leave just enough for what you're going to be sure that you're going to be eating, and leave the same for Shabbos morning. And all the rest of the things could be Pesach-dike stuff, not chametz-dike stuff. And any crumbs that are left, you can flush down the toilet, because everything that you wanted to burn, you burnt already Friday morning. You left over the little bit challah that you want to eat Friday night, and Shabbos morning, but anything else you didn't leave over. And what happens if you find something Friday afternoon that you realize, oh, wait, there's some chametz here that I didn't realize I still have hanging around. So one of two things. Friday afternoon, although you burnt your chametz, you can burn it then if you want. You could put it into a chametz closet that you sold to the guy. And even Shabbos morning, if you find something like that, you can do the same. You can put it into the chametz closet. So you can't eat the chametz, but if you find it, you can still put it away. And again, like I said earlier, on the one hand, it's a little bit easier. It makes this, there isn't that kind of pressure, but you have to plan properly to be sure that you're doing things at the right time and you're covering yourself in terms of doing the bedikas chametz, the burning of the chametz, and then what you have to remember to do is the bittul chametz, which is nullifying the chametz, which is an expression that's said in Aramaic, but it's really meant to be said in the language that you speak, that you understand. So if you don't understand what you're saying in the Aramaic, you haven't fulfilled the nullifying of the chametz. You should say it in English better, because nullifying the chametz means that you are in fact nullifying the chametz, and you know what you're saying, that I am nullifying all the chametz that I may have not seen. If there's any crumbs around your house that you didn't see, so they are bottled, they're nullified. In other words, they're ownerless. I don't own them, and I give up my ownership of anything like that. That's what bittul chametz is really all about. You know, something that I didn't sell because I don't even know that it exists. And it might be a crumb that I couldn't even sell because it's so little, so tiny. And chametz on Pesach is something that you have to be careful even with tiny little pieces. So besides the, you might say that since we're nullifying chametz, why not, what do you have to sell the chametz? Nullify any chametz, it's ownerless. And the answer is just because, first of all, if you have some good chametz, a closet full of chametz, are you really nullifying it? If somebody walked into that house and said, I'm taking it, it's free for all, you're not going to be very happy. So you're not really nullifying it. What you might nullify are crumbs or something that's dirt. But if there's something that's worthwhile, you're not really going to nullify it. So the Torah tells us, although nullifying would do the job, since we're concerned that you're not really going to nullify it, so you have to clean it, burn it, sell it to make sure that it's actually not found in your house. Because if it is, and you didn't really nullify it, then you transgress the issue of chametz b'Pesach. Let's go to the next question. Next question was, can we bake foods with the peels on? And the answer is that taking peels off fruits and vegetables, or fruits and vegetables that you can take the peels off from before you cook them, that's again a chumrah. That's a stringency that many people have accepted upon themselves, but many people have not accepted upon themselves. Because what's the concern there? The concern is that maybe this particular fruit or vegetable touched something that's chametzdik. Or maybe not just touch something that's chametzdik, but let's say maybe somebody was drinking a bottle of beer, and the bottle of beer poured over a case of tomatoes. And now the tomatoes have the beer on it. And now you're going to cook the tomatoes with beer on the skin. So as a result of that, we're not going to do that. So what are we going to do? Because we're concerned, who knows, maybe that happened. What's the chance that that would have happened? But there is a concern. And again, chametz on Pesach, we're extremely careful. And one of the concerns are that something might have touched it that was chametzdik, and as a result of which we want to be careful, and that's why we peel it. So if you're concerned about it, then be concerned. It's a legitimate concern. I mean, it's a legitimate minhag. It's a minhag, and if that's the minhag you have, keep to it fully. And keeping it to it fully means that even before you cook it, you're going to peel it. There are those there are those, there's certain group that says, well, so I guess I say this to tell you, whoever asked the question, that the question is a good question, because there are some that say that if you're going to peel it, you don't have to be machmir. But again, that's an opinion, and that's depending on the custom. But my take on it is that if you're going to take the custom of peeling it, so you peel it all the time. If you don't peel it, make sure to wash it, though. That's certainly something you should be doing. Especially if you don't peel, make sure that the vegetables or the fruits or whatever it is going to be washed well. Because there is certainly a possibility, whether it's with the sprays, there was a time when there was more and more of the spraying. Now maybe there's a little less of those spraying, but there's still that possibility of different things that are sprayed on the foods, for to get the bugs away and to get, on the one hand, there's less spraying, so there's more bugs, and you have to check for the bugs. And that became a whole issue because there's less spraying. But in spite of the fact, so we're in a situation where we have both raw ends of the deal. There's spraying, so we have to peel it. There's not that much spraying. That's why there's more bugs, and we have to check for the bugs. But the reality is that all of those things on regarding chametz on Pesach are things that we're careful about. Next question is about
Rabbi Rosenfeld.
Yes.
I was going to just mention was back about the egg matzahs. Somebody came to my house years ago from Israel to get some matzah. He went to the store. He bought a box of matzah. He didn't realize it actually said chametz on the matzah. He had no idea that they sell matzah in the stores that are actually chametz. Just I didn't know if anybody else saw that. But
if it was a Jewish store, they should have been careful with that. They should have made it clear that this is chametz the matzah. But if it's a regular supermarket,
it was a regular supermarket.
Yeah, so from that perspective, it's just up to the buyer, the consumer, to be sure, even in supermarkets today, they have special dedicated Pesach sections in the supermarkets. So, in some of the supermarkets. But again, you have to be careful. You have to be extremely careful with, products. And there are so many different products out there. Talking about the chumras of Pesach, some people have a chumrah on Pesach that we are extremely careful not to bring, or to, I put it this way, we bring as little into the house that we don't make in the house itself. In other words, finished products that you buy, even with a hechsher, it's amazing what you find today. You live in Pittsburgh, you don't see it as much, but if you lived in New York, whether it's Borough Park or Crown Heights or Flatbush or any of those neighborhoods, you walked into a bakery, you wouldn't know it's Pesach. You walked into not just a bakery, there are pizza stores that are open on Pesach. Kosher Pesach pizzas. There's everything is available today, kosher Pesach. So again, everything is possibly kosher Pesach. But again, one of the chumras on Pesach is that we try to minimize as much as we can in bringing in stuff from outside the home, stuff that's not made in the house. We try to do that to the best of our ability and try to avoid that because, again, we have certain chumras, the other person doesn't have those chumras. So if a person is just incapable of doing it, then he has to, so there's no choice. But so long as someone is capable, the more careful we can be, the better it is. And certainly today there are, a lot of excellent hechsherim. You go even to hotels. You can go. This is the Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin hotel, and this is the triple Mahadrin, and so on and so forth. So those things are all possible. Then you have certain people that will say, I know, Pesach. I'll go to a hotel whenever, but not on Pesach. So again, there's different customs, and when you talk about the customs. Talking about whether it's making sure to take the peels off, or whether it's even with the matzah, the kind of matzah that a person brings into his home. Pesach has to be especially you have to the matzah on Pesach has to be shmura matzah. So today most of the matzah is really watched very carefully with all the chumras. once upon a time, it wasn't much.
Hi, thank you. Hi, yes.
Is that somebody speaking to me?
I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
No, forgiven. So the chametz on Pesach, matzah on Pesach rather, there's many chumras of the matzah on Pesach that that we have to be extremely careful about. Whether certain matzahs that are referred to as the 18-minute matzahs. 18-minute matzah means that when you go into, I don't know how many of you have been to a matzah bakery, but I'm sure you can probably go online and find a matzah bakery online and see how matzahs are made online. Now, how matzahs are really made, but you can see it online. But the reality of it is that the matzahs that are made, the first 18 minutes of the matzahs are obviously, to an extent, because it says that for dough to become chametz, it takes 18 minutes. Anything under 18 minutes, it can't become chametz. If it sits around, if dough sits around and you don't work with it, you don't need it, so it's after 18 minutes it becomes chametz, and the less, obviously, the better. So there's matzahs that, the earlier the matzah is made, from this particular piece of dough, the more mahuder, the more stringent you are about being careful about the matzah. But it's one of those things that, there's no limit. They talk about a particular chassid, one of the great chassidim of the previous generation. They say that he would only eat, the kazayas of matzah, the minimum amount of matzah that was necessary for him on Pesach, and he would eat that, and he would make sure for it to be burnt matzah, to be sure that there's no chametz in it. So you can be careful and you can be careful, and especially considering Pesach with the matzah, there's a whole issue of machine matzahs. And there are some that will tell you absolutely not. And there are many people that don't have a problem with machine matzahs. And there's been these discussions for many, over 200 years since machine matzahs first began. And there have been issues, and there are specific issues regarding the machine matzahs, what the problem with it is, and why some say it's good, why others don't. But again, the point of it is that certain things are halacha, certain things are minhagim, and it's important to differentiate from one to another. And when whatever it is that you're doing, if you're in a situation where you have to pick and choose, you have to find out, is this a minig? Is this a halacha? Is this a stringency I've taken upon myself? Or again, another important thing to keep in mind is it's very important to have stringencies. I shouldn't say important, it's very nice to have stringencies. But it's also important to make sure that the stringencies are not at the expense of somebody else. Often we have, the husband wants to be very strict on this Pesach. And what does it mean to be very strict on this Pesach? It means I'm going to tell my wife to make sure not to do this and not to do that and not to do this and that. 1,000,001 new things that, she has to be careful about. So it's not that the husband is going to be strict and do this, that, and the other, but I'm going to tell her to do this, that, and the other. So it's nice to be stringent. It's nice to take on chumras, but make sure it's not at the expense of somebody else. A chumrah is nice, but if it's at the expense of somebody else, that's not a chumrah. That's not really being nice to somebody. So again, we have to be extremely careful with, on the one hand, being careful with chametz matzah on Pesach. On the other hand, we have to that we do is done first and foremost according to halacha, those specific things that we have to do and that we're required to do. And then chumras come after that. What are those chumras that we've taken upon ourselves? What are the chumras that we should take upon ourselves? So let's make sure not to take too much of that so that we can't deal with it, so that we don't have the simchas yantiv, the joy of yantiv the way we should, which is an obligation of the Torah. And finally, let me get to another question, and that is regarding using ice from an ice maker that's part of our refrigerator. So the answer to that question is really, it depends how cleaned the ice maker was. If you really cleaned it well, washed it out well, cleaned it out well, and so on, that's doable, usable. But you have to be sure that it's cleaned well, and sometimes it becomes a little bit difficult. And depending on how you use it all year round, I don't imagine that there's any chametz that goes through that, but yet chametz could have fallen through that, so you have to clean it out. And the tray that it falls into also has to be cleaned well. So assuming that it's cleaned well, it shouldn't be a problem. And another question is it necessary for me to kasher my rings if I wear them while making challah dough? And the answer to that is, you don't have to kasher your rings, but you do have to clean your rings very well, especially if you're making challah dough with your rings on, there's a good chance that a piece of dough got stuck in it. So you have to be sure to clean it well. The question is, how well can you clean it? And what does it take to clean it? So that's something you're going to have to take a look at it and see. But the bottom line is, you're not eating from your rings, and you're not baking challah with your rings, and don't put your rings into the food, and just make sure that they're cleaned well, and you don't have to kasher them. You want to kasher them, you can, nothing wrong with it, unless be careful that you're not going to ruin anything. The stone is not going to fall out within the kashering process. Certainly don't do it with a torch, but you don't have to kasher it. And let's see, what else?
I'm sorry, Rabbi Rosenfeld.
Yes.
I just wanted you to be aware that there are questions in the chat. I realize there's other questions that are perhaps in front of the line before them, but just so you're aware, they might have direct messaged them to you in the chat, and the ones that were posted in the main chat, I direct messaged to you. So FYI, that's all.
I didn't see any of the questions in the chat, but I do see that there are. Okay, let me see if we can, let's see, let me see what I can get to here. We'll start from the first one. When does the chametz sale go into effect? Friday or Shabbos? Cash extra hamaitzi from the Shabbos meal in the cabinet that will be sold. So the chametz sale goes into effect. The chametz sale actually happens on Friday, but it excludes anything that we're going to set aside for Shabbos. And as a result of that, yes, we can stash extra hamaitzi from the Shabbos meal into the cabinet that will be sold, as long as you do it before the proper time, Shabbos morning. So preferably, if you have, little pieces, flush it down the toilet. But if you have something substantial, you could put it away in the closet. Next question. When does the chametz sale, well, that was that same question. Sorry, I'm going to do it this way. Next question. What needs to be cleaned if somebody is going away for Pesach? And the answer to that is, if you're going away and selling your chametz, selling your house, and nobody's going to be there, nothing needs to be cleaned. You can just close your house up and sell it, and you're good to go. Question again becomes, what about your car? If you sell it, not a problem. Or your office, same thing. But if you're not in any of those places, all of that can be sold, and you don't have to clean it for Pesach. However, you have an obligation of bedikas chametz, and not bedikas chametz in your house because you sold it, but then you have an obligation, meaning that you could you don't want to lose in participating in a mitzvah that is bedikas chametz. How do you do that? So one of two things. You can either, wherever you're going to be, you can participate there in the bedikas chametz, Or as I mentioned earlier, if you have your car with you, you could be doing B'dikas Chametz in your car. So, but you don't have to clean your house if you're going away. If you find chametz on Pesach that you don't want to get rid of, can you just stick it into the place where you were keeping your sold chametz? So that's not a simple question, but as a rule, the answer is yes. You could stick it into the place. Is if this is chametz that arrived during Pesach and mistakenly you accepted it, and now, so that wasn't really included in the sale. But let's say it was included in the sale, but it just wasn't in the closet. So then, yes, you can put it into the chametz closet.
Going back to the checking the chametz,
Yes.
it would be fairly impractical to go to the office and on Thursday night and check there. So is that a requirement, or can one check, before one thing?
So the answer is, if that's impractical, so you can do it Wednesday night, but you can't make a bracha then. Or you can do it Tuesday night.
So it has to be at night. Can you just do it after you leave
Well,
today?
it's best to do b'dikas chametz at night, because b'dikas chametz should be done, if at all possible, with a candle, and that's the way it should be done. If somebody can't do it, suppose you're in a building and you can't come in at night. If you can't,
Right.
you can't. But the better time to do it is at night, and to do it with a candle if you can. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Let's go on to next. Regarding egg matzah, we took care of. Okay, somebody's making the correction about lubavitchcenter.org, where you can sell the chametz online, or you can sell it personally. When does chametz go into effect? We did that. We go into effect. When we sell the chametz, do we have a list? When we sell the chametz, here's another question. When we sell the chametz, do we have to list a dorm room or a locker at school that has my children's property in it? And the answer is yes. And also, for those that have dorm rooms, they should be doing b'dikas chametz in the dorm rooms. So unless it's, again, if it's going to be open during Pesach, if it's going to be, at any point during Pesach, people are going to use it, b'dikas chametz has to be done, whether by the individual or by the school or whatever, but b'dikas chametz has to be done, and it has to be done by the person whose chametz it is in there. So again, unless the place is closed, locked, and included in the Bechiras chametz, that should be checked out. What's the last time that we can eat chametz on Shabbos before this Pesach? I don't have the exact zman here, but we'll put it online. It's probably somewhere about 11 o'clock or so, but I'll give you the, follow, we'll put out the zmanim.
So is davening going to be different?
What's that?
It's on the calendar, the Chabad calendar.
Oh, it is. You have this
The calendar says 11:19.
What is it?
The calendar
that-
says 11:19.
11:19 is the time. Okay, that's the answer.
Right, so does that mean davening will be finished and everybody will come home and we'll make
means that-
kiddush and everything before 11:19?
That is correct. That means that Shabbos davening starts much earlier. Yes, because of that, because we have to finish earlier and we have to get to the meal yet after that. So yes, there's going to be a very early davening. It's going to be a little bit difficult, but we're going to do it. And
But it doesn't matter what time you bench, you can bench anytime.
correct, but you have to. The key is to make sure that you get the chametz is over with.
Mm-hmm.
You can eat. You can continue to eat throughout the day. You don't want to eat too much throughout the day, especially later in the day, because you want to have an appetite for the Seder, for the matzah, but you can continue to eat. throughout the entire Shabbos. It's just the
But you
chametz.
can't just eat anything. You have to eat, right? Certain things you're not supposed to eat.
Well, the
Eating
only thing
doesn't
that
mean
you're
away.
not allowed to eat is very few things. And that is, you don't drink wine, besides the kiddush that you make on Shabbos, Shabbos morning. You don't drink wine later on. You don't eat matzah, and you don't eat anything that are the ingredients of the charoises or the murder. Anything else is acceptable. Will there be boxes for Seamus this year to be picked up? Good
What
question.
about, oops,
What's that?
what about the hard-boiled egg?
What about it?
Some people eat hard-boiled eggs.
At the Seder?
No, yeah, well, that's part of it, but
The
during the
hard-boiled-
day,
So the answer to the question that you probably are asking is,
yes,
can you have hard-boiled eggs during the day? Right? Is that the question?
yes.
And the answer is yes, you can.
Oh,
Because,
good.
yeah, eggs is not a problem.
Thank-
About the Seamus, I don't think it's going to be taken care of this year before Pesach because we just did it not too long ago, after Yantif, and it'll be done at some point, but I don't think it's going to be done before Pesach. And so that's regarding the Seamus. And I think that takes care of the questions that we have here. If anybody, you could continue to send them directly to me at rabbi@lubavitchcenter.org, or you can text it to me, or you can send it to rabbi@yeshivaschools.com, whichever way. It will get to me, and I will, Emir Hashem, respond, or you can call me. Always available, or try to be available, to be able to respond, to be helpful in whatever way possible. In the meantime, I hope some questions were dealt with, and let's decide if we want to have another one next week, because obviously there's a lot more to deal with that we can have, not just one more class, but I think we have to decide if we have enough time to deal with the cooking and the cleaning and everything else. So whatever is decided, I'll be happy to do what I can.
Are there blank forms to sell the chametz at yeshiva?
What's that? There's what?
I don't have a computer, so are there blank forms to sell chametz at the yeshiva?
We don't have a computer, so the answer is that we'll make blank forms available at. We'll have forms here. We will just make a place at the entrance somewhere that we can put a bunch of forms so that that anybody that wants to can have it available. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good point. Okay, in the meantime, everybody have a wonderful evening and an easy preparation for Pesach, and thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Toda rabba, toda rabba.
Thank you.
you. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night. Kosher Freilich and Pesach.
Kosher v'sameach to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it was really a pleasure to see Rabbi Pfeffer. Did everybody see Rabbi Pfeffer online?
Senior?
Yes.
Yeah, he looks really good.